Iron City built. It's time for the Steel City Nation podcast. Here's your host, Mark Maradei.
All right, my guest today is Josh Taylor from Pittsburgh's 93.7 The Fan, KDKA Sports. Josh, how you doing?
Doing all right, Mark. Thanks for having me. Hope everything's treating you well right now.
We're doing well as can be, I guess. I'm going to jump right in for us. I like to dig a little bit and find out what leads people down the path they go as far as choosing their career. Tell me why you decided to get into sports media.
I guess the best answer for that is I've done quite a few things in my lifetime. I've been in theater. I've been involved in music. I've been involved in different areas of business, and it probably dates back to when I was in elementary school. I was one of those kids that grew up, I'm an 80s baby for starters. So I remember the days of, the fifth quarter on WPXI and the Sam Nover days and watching John Fetco on the Fetco Zone and Bob Pompiani in his younger days and Guy Junker and watching all of those guys and thinking to myself, man, those guys have the coolest job in the world. And it was one of those things where if I ever got a shot to do that, it's something that I would really, really pursue. Went to college, went to Duquesne, was a journalism major, ended up being a communications major by the time I graduated, but could not find the right path to get into this industry like I wanted to. So I ended up graduating and I kind of bounced around between jobs. And after a while, I kind of found a home working as a contractor. I was working downtown at Highmark in Fifth Avenue Place. And my thing was I was the one guy in the office that usually got into a bunch of sports conversations all the time. A lot of stuff with the guys that I worked with was really centered around sports. We'd go to opening day at PNC Park every year. It's actually a tradition that same group still holds to this day. I think maybe all of one of the guys still works there, like the other dozen of us don't. But we still meet up for opening day every year. It's kind of a big deal. It's a little bit different for me now because they're at opening day tailgating and I'm at opening day walking by going, hi guys, I got to go to work. Well, they're like, playing beer pong and slapping the bag of wine. I'm like walking into the press box like, why am I sober? And they're having fun. It's weird. But that's kind of how it went there. And eventually got into a discussion at work, water cooler discussion as always. Yeah. And I was in the middle of a nice, good soliloquy about the Steelers and why the Rooneys are such a different ownership group, why they're so different from every other family in sports. And my supervisor kind of stops me mid-sentence and she's like, why are you here? I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, you should not be here. You should be somewhere on TV or the radio talking about this. You know way too much about this stuff and you talk about this way too much to be here. And it kind of made me wonder, well, why am I here? I really didn't know because I'd kind of gotten off of the path. So I ended up going back to school at Duquesne. I went back for a year, took 18 credits, and got my broadcasting degree because, of course, when you're in college, they get all the good stuff after you leave because broadcast wasn't an area of concentration when I was in school the first time around. So I leave, and they add a broadcast department, and I join on. And it's like, okay, here we go. So I go back for a year, and then I got to meet Mike Clark from WTA, who I've watched for years in this market. He's one of the names as far as news anchors go, and he was my professor at Duquesne. I'll never forget this. It was our first day in class, and then our first day in anchoring, reporting, and announcing, you had to get on camera and you had to shoot a stand-up. So there may be a few kids that went in front of me. They come in, they do their line, and it was my turn. I got up there, and they were taping everybody doing their stand-up. I kind of had my script memorized. I stand up in front of the camera. I do my script. I do my stand-up in one take. And Mike's like, okay, great, like you're done. So day 2, you had to critique all the tapes and see what everybody did wrong. And we go to watch mine, and Mike Clark looks at my tape, and he stops it and goes, you have presence. You can't teach that. And I'm like, that's it? Like, no, you need to do this or stand up straight or fix nothing. All he said was you have presence. You can't teach that. And then I was done. And I'm like, wait a minute. So class is over, and I chase him out of the room. And I told him, you didn't tell me what I did wrong. And he said, you didn't do anything wrong. Matter of fact, you did everything right. And if you really work at it, I can help you really get into this business if you're willing to do whatever it takes. And I said, you tell me what to do, and I'll do it. So for a year, I got to learn from, one of the, preeminent news anchors in this market for, decades. And under Mike's tutelage, I learned a lot. And it opened the door for me to get a job at WTA afterwards. I started in the web department, and eventually I worked my way into, doing some production work for the sports department. That's how I got to work with guys like John Burton and Guy Junker, and John Meyer and Andrew Stocky. And I got to really learn a lot from those guys. But one guy I learned a lot from, Michael Bennett was the producer at the time, and he taught me so much about just different facets of the business. And he said, if you want to go far, you need to learn everything you can. And he was one of the guys that taught me everything, as far as understanding the side behind the camera, understanding the production side and how everything works. And ironically, I found out later on that Michael was one of the producers for the Fifth Quarter, which was one of my favorite shows to watch as a kid. So imagine my surprise to find out that, the guy who's produced the show that I watched all the time was now the guy I'm working with. And that's not even counting the fact that, I watched Guy on TV. I listened, to him on the radio. I read his column in the Trib back in the day. And I was a big Stan and Guy fan. And I'm like, man, it would be cool to have the same kind of career path that Guy Junker has. And then all of a sudden I'm working with him at WTAE. And then later on, I end up working with him at triblive Radio. Yeah. And it's kind of strange how that happened. And, some people will tell you that sometimes their greatest failures are what led to their bigger successes. And for me, it was ESPN 1250's Top Fan Contest, which I entered in twice and came in second place twice. So it led to me eventually getting a phone call from a couple guys at triblive Radio who were formerly at ESPN 1250. They're like, hey, we want you to come over here and work with us. And I got to do that for about maybe 9 months or so. And by the end of 2011, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do because I'm getting my position at WTA is getting eliminated. So now I got to figure out what I'm going to do there. I got to find another job. I'm just starting to get my feet wet at triblive Radio, and they tell me, hey, our sister station in Fayetteville, Arkansas needs a weekend anchor. Are you interested? I said, sure. So I send my tape there, and the sports director, his name is Mike Jocks, known as Jocko by everybody who knows him and loves him. Okay. He was the sports director. He saw my tape, gave me a call. We were covering a Penguin game, and I got that phone call about coming to Arkansas, and I'm like, I'm in the stairwell at PPG Paints Arena doing a phone interview for a job. It was the strangest of circumstances, but fast forward to 2012, I'm there that January. I move in a couple months later. I'm in Arkansas working as a sports anchor in my first TV job with the ABC station in Fayetteville. And actually we covered the Fayetteville and Fort Smith areas. Okay. We covered both. So sometimes there's a lot of traveling back and forth between both places, probably like 40-minute drive here and there. But there I was, right dead smack in the middle of SEC country, covering Arkansas and covering high school football and a bunch of high school sports and minor league baseball, which was really, really cool with the Northwest Arkansas Naturals, the AA affiliate of the Royals. And I got some great experience there. And eventually around 2014, I had decided, you know what, it's time to make the move back home. My dad had passed away the year before, and I knew I wanted to be closer to my family. I knew I wanted to be closer to my mom, and I had already made that promise, like, hey, the first chance I get, I'm coming home. So here I come back in 2014, not knowing what I was going to do. Didn't know if I was going to do TV, didn't know if I was going to do radio. And within 2 weeks of being at home, I get a phone call. Like, hey, triblive Radio is looking for you to come back. And I'm like, absolutely, let's do it. So, less than a month after I get home from Arkansas, I'm back at triblive Radio. And a couple months after that, KDKA is like, hey, we got a guy leaving. Would you be interested in his job? So just like that, things kind of started popping for me. And in a way that even I didn't expect. I didn't know if I was going to be doing this when I came back in 2014. And here we are almost 6 years later, having worked at 2 different radio stations now and still at KDKA, and having written 5 books in the process, or co-written 5 books. It's just crazy how your path can always take you in different winding roads, and also being able to do play-by-play for high school football and for Duquesne men's and women's basketball and color commentary as well. So it's just one of those really weird paths. And I tell people all the time, no one's path is the same, but you don't want one like mine, because it takes you way too many miles.
You're all over the board. What was it like in Arkansas? Like, when I think of Arkansas, the only thing I can think about is the Razorbacks.
Yeah, and it's think of West Virginia, because West Virginia, they're crazy about the Mountaineers.
Sure.
You go all over the state of West Virginia, and you see that WV everywhere. You see that blue and gold everywhere, and everyone knows the words to Country Roads. It's the same level of fervor in Arkansas. Crank it up maybe 2 or 3 notches. You go all over the state of Arkansas, the Hogs is the first thing on everyone's minds. It is Razorbacks all day long, and it was a really awesome experience to be able to do that. But where we were situated in Fayetteville was literally just a few miles from the Oklahoma state line, kind of like Pittsburgh up against West Virginia and Ohio. Yeah. Where we were in Fayetteville was up against Oklahoma and Missouri. So there was a lot of overlap there. So not only did we cover Arkansas, we covered Oklahoma, and we covered Oklahoma State because our DMA stretched into Oklahoma, kind of like how Pittsburgh's DMA sometimes stretches into West Virginia. So it was the same dynamic. Yeah. So I found myself in the market covering 3 Division I schools, like I was in the previous market covering 3 Division I schools, depending on the season. So it was a fun kind of transition, having been in a similar kind of situation, covering 3 different schools, but being in a different city, in a different town, and a different kind of lifestyle was probably the biggest change for me, having to adjust to, you know, seeing bridges and concrete and dealing with traffic on the parkway every other hour. Yeah. It's kind of a different feel, but I loved being in Fayetteville. It was a college town. There's a different kind of feel to it. And the thing that I liked the most about being in Arkansas, and it reminded me a lot about Pittsburgh, was the people. You know, you run into people that were just absolutely great to you. You'd see them on the street, they'd say hello. And it's one of those things that kind of reminds you of Pittsburgh. There was a neighborhood kind of feel there where people look out for each other. And that's one thing that kind of reminds me of that. And the other thing is the topography. There's hills and valleys and all the fun stuff in between in Arkansas too. So that really made it feel like home for me.
How were the high school sports? I know you said you covered some of the high school stuff there. Could you compare? I always say, you know, I'm in Maryland and our football is really good in Maryland, but I always say that I think an average team in Pennsylvania could give one of the higher-ended teams in Maryland a fight just because of the way the dynamics are constructed within.
Yeah, it's funny because I got to cover high school football in Arkansas, and it was a great experience. The level of play, depending on the class you're in, because Arkansas has 7 classifications, which is, if you can believe it, there's 7, and it's kind of widespread. But depending on where you were, some of the schools from Little Rock were really, really talented, especially in football and basketball. Some really good ones in Northwest Arkansas. Fayetteville High School, Bentonville High School were always among the bigger ones when it came to football and basketball. Really good high school football team in Greenwood, Arkansas, about maybe 10, 15 miles outside of Fort Smith. But Greenwood, the Bulldogs were a big deal. And they were such a big deal that this is kind of where my worlds collided while I was working down there. Greenwood had the second longest win streak in the country. This was about 8 years ago. So their second longest win streak in the country was number 2 to Clairton. Clairton was number 1. Greenwood was number 2. And it just so happened the night Clairton's win streak got snapped, I happened to be covering a Greenwood game. So I'm on my Twitter feed, and one of my good friends, Matt Fargo, who we've been friends for, almost 10 years now working together, he had tweeted out, you know, Clairton goes down, the nation's longest win streak comes to an end. And I go, I'll never forget this tweet. You know, it was like by way of Clairton and PA losing tonight, Greenwood, Arkansas now takes over the longest winning streak in the country. And that tweet went across the state. It's like everybody in Arkansas, Greenwood's got the longest win streak in the country. And I was the first guy to let everybody know. So people went nuts that night in Greenwood. I was also there the night Greenwood's streak ended. So I don't know if it was my fault or what. So I don't know if I should take credit for saying they had the second longest win streak to becoming the longest, or being responsible for it ending. But it was kind of a weird way for the worlds to collide there, that 2 different schools that I had covered at some point, one had the longest win streak and the other one took over. And it was kind of a weird dynamic there. But high school sports in Arkansas, it's really awesome because you can go into some towns and you hear like the old cliche, you go to a small town, the whole town shuts down. Well, that literally happens. That happens in places like Greenwood. You come in, the whole town's at the football game. The only people who aren't there are the folks working at like McDonald's and Sonic that night. Everybody else is at the game, you know, because someone has to man the drive-thru, obviously. But outside of that, the entire town shuts down, and it's a great experience. And I got to cover like the Friday night game of the week every week, so I got to actually shoot games and then cut packages and put my own little spin on everything we saw. And it was a really awesome experience.
So that's that Western Pennsylvania feel to it, because
Absolutely.
I grew up in the 80s in Western PA, and I can, you know, like everything shut down. I came from Vanderbilt. Yes. You know, up the Kiski-Minitus River, you know, and Kiski area high schools where I went. And, man, I can remember our town being closed. I lived on one side of the football field, and my parents had to do the old, let's put out the lawn chairs so we have a place to park. It was just crazy, though. You know, it was so much fun. I mean, people who don't get to live that experience, you don't know what you're really missing with high school sports. And now, so speaking of high school sports, are we going to have any this year? Is COVID going to shut you down up in Pennsylvania? Because we just found out down here in Maryland, the school district I actually teach in, we are not going to be live at school until after the first semester. And then they officially made an announcement that our same school district will not have winter and fall sports. So there's a lot of people up in arms about that.
And I imagine it's not an easy decision, being just within a stone's throw of DC. It's going to really affect that decision-making a lot with everything going on around Washington. The PIAA met recently, and unless things have changed since then, I'm pretty sure the PIAA has decided that they're going to roll with it. Right now, everything goes on as scheduled. I'd like to say I'm optimistic that it follows through. If I have to maybe expect anything, I wonder if things might be delayed a bit. Even if they do go through that, I expect there might be some delay because – and I think this is the one thing that kind of reflects in every area. I don't think anybody in any two areas really have the same idea of what to expect. And it's kind of troubling, and it creates a conundrum really, because you have this state that says, hey, we're going to do this, and this state says no, and this school district says yes, and this school district says no. And it becomes a really big pickle that a lot of people have to try to get themselves out of. So I'd be surprised if we saw everything start on time, because I wouldn't be surprised if some school district said, hey, look, we got to wait and see what's going on here. And I would think, and this is just an assumption, I would think that every school district has the same value of, hey, let's keep these kids' safety as the utmost priority. Of course, you want to get, the community involved. You want to have everybody there. You want to have fans in the stands. But, the more important thing is let's keep these kids on the field safe. Let's keep everybody else that's, affiliated or has something to do with what's going on with the game safe. And that goes for the coaching staff too. If that's not the priority, then we're going about this all wrong.
I've heard some pretty cool plans down here. I know one of the counties, everything's going to be within county. There's not going to be state championships if anything runs anyway. One of the counties has talked about when we get back in school doing each sports season in a 2-month segment with small overlaps. Starting out with winter, because it's still going to be cold at the end of January, end of February, middle of March, then jumping into spring sports, fall sports, and then ending with the spring sports. So it's going to be kind of cool to see if anybody lets that play out. I don't know. There's been a lot of autonomy down here because instead of having small school districts like Clarendon School District, like, Pittsburgh City Schools, down here it's all county. So the county makes a decision for the entire school system. So, all right. So let's shift gears a little bit. Pirates are days away from – actually tomorrow starts the abbreviated 60-game season. Can they compete this year in the Central? How about does Derek Shelton breathe new life into this group, or Nuttings Wallet, again, talking about money, will he still have that same impact? What do you think?
Well, I think the easiest thing to draw from it is people are going to go directly to Bob Nutting's wallet because it's pretty much the default response here.
Right.
I kind of have different answers for all three. I think the one thing that you look at with this team is, if you're talking about a 60-game season, is can they do the basic things that other teams can do?
Sure.
And I don't know if they can do all of them. I wonder if they can put together offense consistently. I wonder if they can put together consistent starting pitching in the bullpen. And right now, a lot of people will tell you that the answer to the bullpen is no. The starting pitching might be the one thing that doesn't surprise people, or I should say that hasn't really disappointed. That might be the thing that surprises people, but that's the thing I look at. Can you do the basic things right? And I always look at baseball in 3 areas. I look at it in pitching, hitting, and defense. And the thing is, you can win a lot of games with 2 of the 3, but one of them has to be pitching. Has to be.
Right.
And if they don't have enough pitching to do it, you're going to have a problem. You can win games with pitching and defense. You can win games with pitching and offense, but you can't do it without pitching. So even if their offense does go crazy, if the pitching doesn't follow suit, they're going to have a hard time keeping runs off the board. They're going to have a lot of 10-9, 9-8, 7-6 games that you're going to lose.
Yeah.
So having those 3 elements, pitching, defense, and hitting, pitching is going to have to be one of the main things you need to win, and I don't know if they can do it consistently to do that. But we say that with a small caveat. It's a 60-game season. How many times have we seen this team go absolutely supernova for 60 games and then fall to earth after maybe 70 or 80? So anything can still happen. If you're looking at a small sample size, we've seen teams go on runs in the playoffs that are wild card teams and make that run and get to the World Series. So 60 games, some people might look at it as, oh, well, you know, expect the same thing. And my answer to that is not so fast, because you also have some teams around the league that don't have their best players. Some of their best players or their best pitchers have opted out, or they're nursing injuries or things like that. So when you don't have everything full strength, a lot of different things can happen. So, you know, part of me says I don't think they can do everything they need to do over 60-game span, and the other part of me says, hey, it's 60 games. Anything can go down.
Yeah.
As far as Derek Shelton, I think Derek Shelton having a different voice is a huge thing in this organization. I think it'll go over big in the clubhouse. And I think a lot of people forget Derek Shelton, you know, had to deal with a young team last year. He was the bench coach from Minnesota.
Yeah.
He was the right-hand man of the guy who eventually became the AL Manager of the Year in Rocco Baldelli. And Derek Shelton, a lot of people inside that organization and out will tell you that Derek Shelton was the man behind the curtain. So it's not like it's that big of a secret. And I'll refer everybody to a really great story. I believe it was a piece that was written, I think it was in New York Times, if I'm not mistaken, but a really great piece about Derek Shelton and the work he did in Minnesota and how those guys in that organization really relied on him. And this is after he was a guy who was interviewed for the manager's job. And they hired Rocco Baldelli with minimal experience as far as coaching and instruction in MLB in the minor leagues. So they went with the guy that was the name in the face, and Derek Shelton was kind of the guy that brought the experience to the table. So if he can do that in Minnesota as a bench coach, just imagine what he can do in Pittsburgh with the right kind of team around him, with an organization that's going to stock him with talent. I believe, honestly, that Ben Cherington, when his name first surfaced as a possible GM candidate, I endorsed it right away, because he's a guy that has a track record. He's a guy that has a history of building teams with youth and through the draft. He did it in Boston. He did it briefly in Toronto, the little bit of time he was there. And I think he can do that in Pittsburgh. And I think this is just the start, just this abbreviated draft class. And if I'm a Pirates fan, I kind of feel cheated, because he couldn't bring in the crop of talent that he wants to, that full group of talent in that first draft. So it does feel like it's going to handcuff him a bit. But if there's a guy that I think that can take this job and find a way to turn the system over quickly, I think it's Ben Cherington. So we might not see the effects of what Derek Shelton can really do with this team until 2021, because once again, 60 games. You're not going to be able to see how he handles those dog days of summer when they go on those 10, 15 game slides, or maybe they go 2-13 or 1-14, and how he responds to that and how those guys respond to him. We may not see the full effect of that until 2021. And at the same time, if I'm one of the younger guys on this team, and if I'm a Brian Hayes, COVID positive test aside, if I'm a Mitch Keller, if I'm, one of these younger guys trying to get a spot on this team, I'm telling myself, hey, this 60 games is my audition. This is how I get my job in 2021. So you're almost getting like another spring training to really show what you can do. The difference is there's a little bit more at stake at the end of it. But you get a good 60-game audition if you're a young guy on this team to really compete for a job in 2021. And I think Derek Shelton gets a good 60-game, primer to see what this club has. And at the end of it, he'll figure out what he needs, and then they can reload. So it's, I'd love to say you're going to get the full effect of Derek Shelton. I don't think we will. But I think the parts that we see, I think people will like them a lot sooner than they think.
You talking about that condensed season and the impact of it. Before we came on, I told you I was just kind of reading Twitter. John Heyman said that they've reopened negotiations to expand the playoffs from 10 teams to 16 teams. That could be something that the Pirates could find themselves backing into. And I also read an article earlier today. I talked about 5 teams that potentially will underachieve in this 60-game season just because they don't have the dynamic to do that. They need a longer stretch of time. And the Cardinals and Cubs were 2 of the top teams that were mentioned out of the 5. And I got to thinking, yeah, I can see that. And I've been actually singing the Pirates' praise. I mean, I'll forever ever be a faithful brings eternal hope for the Pirates. But I'm a little concerned about the pitching as much as I love Musgrove, and he seems to have a great bond with the new pitching coach. I like Trevor Williams. I think Mitch Keller is going to have a different season this year. Honestly, I think you're going to see the Mitch Keller we've seen coming through the organization. Derek Holland could definitely be a a productive guys, number 4 and number 5. Who knows who number 5 will actually be? But I think you're going to miss Tyon in terms of him taking the hill. And I'm not one of those guys who's I like Archer. I like his competitiveness. I felt like he got handcuffed from day one when he came to Pittsburgh.
I think that's fair.
I think they tried to change the style of the guy. I think they knew what they were getting, and they tried to change him. And he ain't going to be around after this year, most likely. But, if you have those two guys, I definitely am buying into them making that run. There's no question about it. But who do you think is going to be the impact player for this team? I know Brian Reynolds keeps popping up, and Derek Shelton seems to love him. Me personally, I'm a little worried about Josh Bell.
See, I'm not. I'm probably one of the few people that isn't. I think he's seen enough now in these past couple seasons, especially with the first full season that he had, and then the season he had last year where June was either May or June. I won't say it was May, but it was one of the best months individually in the history of the game.
Yeah.
I think we saw the highs and lows of Josh Bell. And we saw just how quickly the game can knock you down when you feel like you're riding on top of it. I'm expecting it to be a learning experience for him. I think it probably teaches him how to completely revamp how he approaches the game. It sounds like the way he approached it in the offseason and spring training, he's kind of developed a new way to work himself around and get himself better. I'm more optimistic about him. I'm one of those people that when you see the ball coming off his bat when he's at his best, it's really hard to say no to. I think the fact that he's really cemented himself as the number 4 hitter in this lineup, he wasn't just bestowed the honor by default. He was a guy that earned the actual honor. And I think that's a huge thing to have in this lineup. But the bigger thing for me is it's not just about what Josh Bell can do. It's about how long we expect him to do it alone.
Yeah.
That's the bigger thing for me. And I talked about this on the Donut Bag podcast. Shout out to Joe Bag of Donuts. We talked about this because you have guys like Brian Reynolds and Adam Frazier who might be good guys to put ahead of a Josh Bell. But he's going to need somebody doing something behind him. And, the fact that Gregory Polanco has tested positive for COVID-19 maybe slows down that possibility. Maybe the thought of having universal DH maybe, puts this offense in a better position to have someone or have 1 or 2 guys in place behind him. Me personally, I'd love to see Colin Moran get some regular ABs against right-handers because he's a left-handed bat that hits right-handers really, really well.
Yeah.
Do I want him to see him against a lefty? Not so much, but I'd love to see just what these guys can do around him, and that's part of the concern that I have. Because I think we know what to expect from Adam Frazier. I think we know what to expect from Brian Reynolds, and even to a degree what to expect from Colin Moran. But can everybody else get in line? If Gregory Polanco, is eventually, cleared to return, and is he healthy enough? Do we see everything we need from him? And can he be the kind of player that he was a few years back when he actually hit 25 home runs and actually showed some power? He doesn't have to be – I don't need him to be another Josh Bell. If he can be himself a couple years back when he was actually producing and be that compliment, I'm happy with that. I think Josh Bell needs compliments more than he needs clones because I don't think there are any clones on this team. But can he have compliments around him? Because if he has, then it makes his job a lot easier.
Does he make it out of next offseason? It scares me with Josh Bell because, he has another productive year. He may not necessarily come to the forefront and say, I want paid. But when you have a guy like, guys that come up due for the Pirates, and you know it as well as I know it, when they come up due, we normally don't pay them. We let them walk.
Normally. Now, here's the gift of having a young team. When you have a young team and you're trying to start with a young nucleus, you're trying to start with a young core, there are going to be some guys that are easier to pay than others. Because you and I both agree, Chris Archer probably is not long for the parish. So there's a couple of guys that are going to have some cheaper salaries. Starling Marte is already gone. Gregory Polanco is pretty much at a considerable discount as opposed to what he would probably have earned had he been a healthy guy producing at the level he was expected to. So you're really saving some dimes here and there. So when it comes to Josh Bell, he's a guy who has to be a cornerstone of this franchise because, honestly, what else is there? Who else is there that you can really depend on to be that reliable? And I'm one of those people right now that's giving Ben Cherington the benefit of the doubt because if we've seen what they did in Boston, they took young talent, they found the best young talent, they locked those guys up, and then they found the other pieces to complement around them. Because when you're building with homegrown, homogenous talent, it's easier to have those guys, set them apart and say, okay, we can commit to these guys, we can pay these guys, and put other young, cheaper talent around them, at least while they're still cheap, at least by comparison. So you can still do that and make it work. Now, as far as paying some of those guys to stick around, that's where the proof is in the pudding. Because here's the thing. When Cherrington was in Boston with Theo Epstein, they got a lot of guys right that they paid, and they got a few guys wrong. Yeah. So you're going to break some eggs to make that omelet. You're going to get a couple of them wrong. And the question for me is, will it cripple the franchise by doing that? But I think Josh Bell has to be a priority. And given the financial state that they'll be in next year, that's assuming that this season doesn't completely throw things out of whack financially. At least it shouldn't in theory when you're a multi-billion-dollar organization like Major League Baseball.
Exactly.
The economics of the game shouldn't be altered that completely. You'd like to think that they'll be in a position next year, knowing what's coming off the books, that they say, you know what, we can commit to Josh Bell. Let's get some more young talent in here and help him out. And maybe this group starts to mature with a Brian Reynolds and a Josh Bell and a couple other guys at the centerpiece.
I like them giving Cole Tucker an opportunity in the outfield too. He had a heck of a catch the other day I saw on tape. I think they need to find a place for that guy, not only because he's a productive baseball player, but he's a personality that you need on that team. I think you lost that personality with Andrew McCutchen, and Josh Bell's not that guy. He's not the outspoken guy. In fact, who really is it on that team that's going to speak up? Tyon talks a little bit. Or
it's Joe Musgrove. Joe Musgrove is that dude. Joe Musgrove is the guy who tells you what's on his mind. And I thought it was very clear after the first practice at PNC Park. Now, granted, we weren't allowed into the practice because there was the county announcement that came down literally the night before that prevented that. But he had a Zoom call afterward. And, he's expected to be one of those guys that's vocal in the clubhouse. And one of the things he was vocal about was making sure everybody followed the protocols as far as, wearing masks and social distancing and make sure everybody was safe. And he says, look, it has to start with the guys that are the leaders in the room. And Derek Shelton says it. He expects Joe Musgrove to be a vocal guy. He expects him to be a leader. I think he's going to be one of those guys. And Pittsburgh fans like Joe Musgrove just because of his personality as a player on the field. And I think this is going to be that year where his personality as a leader and his personality in the clubhouse will show a little bit more. And I think people will get on board with that too.
They need that. I miss Pirate baseball being Pirate baseball, to be honest with you. There's a missing element. Even when they were winning those games back in 13, 14, and 15 and making the wild card game. Andrew McCutchen, yes, but you really didn't get that sense of we could make that run to the World Series. You just never had that feeling ever.
Yeah, it felt like the other shoe never dropped.
Right.
Like there was a lot there to get behind, but there was just maybe a piece or two missing. And it seemed like every year there was just one element missing. And that happens with a lot of organizations where they will get so close and that one thing will be missing and it just falls short. Think about Oakland for all these years.
Yeah.
Think about Tampa, actually, even though they actually got to a World Series, I believe it was in 2008 or 2009 when they lost to Philly. But for all those years, it was like, hey, they've got all these things in place, but there was always that one piece missing. With Oakland, it was maybe, the starting pitching kind of fell apart or hit the wall at the wrong time. Or maybe the offense, was able to put up runs, but the pitching just could not keep pace with it. And with that group in 13, 14, and 15, it was the same thing. You had a really good young nucleus. You had some really good talent that they built in through the first round of the draft. And you also had some good veteran leadership. You had guys like A.J. Burnett that were able to stand in the forefront and say, this is how we do these things, and this is how it's done. And it helps when you have a guy who's won a World Series, who has that kind of experience, and when he talks, people listen. You got a guy like that now. I don't know. I don't know if people really want to give him the credit for the World Series ring that he has. But the fact of the matter is Joe Musgrove's been around for a while. He's won a World Series. It's one of those things you're like, look, you really have to respect a guy that has that kind of experience, that has that kind of resume, because that guy's been there. Yeah. So if that guy tells you what it takes to get there, you listen to that guy. So that's why I'm really expecting it. Not only am I expecting it to happen for Joe Musgrove, I'm hoping for it for the team's sake, because you got some young guys now that can really benefit from that. And I think that's one of the things that sticks out.
Yeah, they just, and I'll wrap it up with this and we'll move on, but they got to play with a sense of urgency every day. They can't go with the Buttermaker mentality that I kind of felt like they had the last few years under and Coach Hurdle.
And this is a perfect opportunity. 60 games. It's like, go nuts for 60 games. What's the worst that can happen? Especially if you're a young player that I talked about earlier. Yeah, you got a shot to audition for a job, but you might be a guy that becomes a centerpiece in a team that comes out of nowhere. Yep. Go nuts these 60 games because anything can happen at this point.
I haven't heard this and I haven't researched it, but is there going to be a trade deadline? Are they going to have anything implemented like that? Have you heard anything about that?
I am not clear on that, and that's actually a question I wish I knew the answer to. But yeah, I'd have to go back and check.
All right, so let's flip it around a little bit. Let's talk about Penguins Camp 2.0. What was the vibe like on day one? I know you were there.
It was eerie in the fact that it was eerily normal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you walk in not knowing what to expect. You didn't know if the players would show some kind of, maybe being tentative with how they approached everything, with, making contact with each other. But they went in and had practice. And as a guy who's been going to quite a few Penguins practices last decade, it looked like a Penguins practice to me. It looked like those guys are just back out there playing hockey. And I think to a man, all the guys who spoke with the media that day via WebEx, they all said the same thing. Like, we were just glad to get out there and play again. And you can see them feeling like they were getting back to normal. And it looked as normal as it looked as normal on our end as it probably felt for those guys on their end.
So let's just flip it from what I was thinking. And Sid's current injury, is this something that we should all be a little concerned about? I mean, I know Sullivan said I'm not allowed to speak about it. It's part of the rules, but are you hearing anything?
When it comes to Sidney Crosby, we know that we know, if anything, this team is going to be as tight-lipped about it as possible. And if they're erring on the side of caution, I don't blame them. This is a chance for them to really, grasp another brass ring that a lot of organizations haven't grasped. This could be, just another one to add, another banner to raise for this organization in the Crosby-Malkin era. So I imagine they're going to take every precaution necessary to make sure that everything is fine with Sidney Crosby, and don't. If we've learned anything with this team as far as how we've seen them handle things with Sid in the past, when they think it's time for us to know, they'll let us know, and they won't do it a moment before. But right. I'd like to think that they're going to take every precaution possible to make sure Sid's ready to go.
Well, he was out there today, did skated a half hour before practice. I don't know how much it's important for him to do this week. They're going to drop the puck on August 1st, which is not that far away. And I'd rather have a healthy Sid on the ice for that. And it seems like, just like you said, it may not be anything that dramatic because they're still skating his line, just plugging a different – who was it, Lafferty that they plugged in there, just to keep that line intact at the top of the order. I think if they thought it was something more significant, they would change that up a little bit.
And not to mention the fact that if we know anything, if you can't keep Sidney Crosby off the ice, he's going to get out there some way or another. Yeah. That man eats, sleeps, breathes hockey. That is it. I mean, we talk about people that were born to do things. Sidney Crosby was born, and some might even argue genetically engineered to be a hockey player. Now, granted, we know that's not a literal thing, but if there's a guy who was born to play this game, it's him. And if he can find any way to get any hockey out of his system, he's going to do it. So it doesn't shock me at all that he's already at least skating and on the ice, because I think if you denied Sidney Crosby of skating on ice, I think his brain might just completely shut down. I think his body would just completely go limp and look, Sid can't function without hockey. He needs it in his life. So I think the fact that he's skating, alone is still a good sign.
We're so lucky to be Pittsburgh fans with Lemieux, Yager, Crosby, Malkin. Even the worst part of this is, and I hate to say this, and I've been thinking about it, and I actually told my son, he's 10 years old, he's an ice hockey player himself, and he loves the Pens, he loves Sid. I said, if something would happen and they get knocked out by Montreal, they have a really good chance of getting Alexis Lafreniere. I said, that's not the worst thing in the world, buddy. I said, that's the next wave coming in.
It's shades of 84 all over again. Yeah. They're like, wait a minute, they could get this guy added with this guy and this guy when this organization has already had this guy and this guy too. Is that fair? Yeah. I can imagine I can feel just the radiating anger from the other side of the state at that point.
Oh my God!
Because the conspiracy theories would just fly left and right. They'd be flying from 5 hours away in Philly. They'd be flying from a few hours west in Columbus. they'd be flying from a few hours, southeast in D.C. They're just going to be coming from all directions, and they're just going to meet in the middle of the conspiracy theory ground zero if that were to happen. So for the rest of the league's benefit, maybe it's better that it doesn't happen because people might lose their minds. But it would be Christmas all over again in this town if that were the case. That'd be a great, great blessing to have in disguise.
How do you like the 2014 playoff format? You think it was the right thing to do? Are they going to get through this whole thing, or is COVID going to shut it down?
I think it was. I think they've at least – I give the NHL credit. They came up with a plan. And when it comes to leagues and having their ducks in a row and maybe having things organized or knowing what they're going to do, let's not kid ourselves. If you had to rank the Major Four, the NHL is usually towards the bottom of that pecking order.
Yeah.
But when it came to this, they had a plan. They had a system. They knew how they're going to do it. They tried a couple of ideas. They threw a few things against the wall. Some of them stuck, some of them did not. But I give them credit. They were thinking ahead. They were being proactive. And they were coming up with a way to say, you know what, let's find a way to get this done. And on top of that, they even managed to even keep more labor peace going and slid that in to kind of prop the table up. So, props to the NHL for really having everything on point in order to do that. I think it's fantastic. So the 2014 format, we'll see how it goes. I mean, are we kidding ourselves by thinking that, a hard playoff format that's already the hardest in sports, in my opinion, to win a championship gets a little bit harder? I mean, what other league to actually make that harder than the NHL? But given the circumstances, everything's going to be a little bit more complicated. Whether or not this gets seen all the way through, I really don't know. Especially when you see, teams and players testing positive and members of organizations testing positive. If they can find a way that by the time they get to Toronto and Edmonton, that everything can be controlled, which I don't know if they can do it. The NBA is finding a way to do it now. Will it stay that way? It's a really murky crystal ball to look into. I hope for their sake they do. I'm wondering how they're going to do it. And if they pull it off, man, hats off, because it just seems like an impossible task.
In everything, I think I read this correctly, everything inevitably shifts to Edmonton in terms of conference finals and the Stanley Cup. Am I correct in that?
I think you're correct. I have to double check, but I think you're correct. I mean, if worse comes to worse, it's 50-50 odds. So it's either Toronto or Edmonton. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's Edmonton.
Yeah. I was marginally happy that they were having it in Canada. I think Canada deserves it.
I think it's a smarter move, honestly, just given the outlook and everything. And one thing Canada's managed to do much better than the U.S., as I might add, they've managed to find ways to get those numbers down. They've actually done the right things. They've done things that are necessary. And like you said, I think it's something that's deserving, if for no other reason. I'll kind of quote Sean Doolittle here because, sports is the reward of a functioning society. And I think what Canada's done as far as responding to this pandemic has been good. And if you want to call it a reward, it's great. Granted, no one in your country has won the cup in a couple of decades now. I'm going to keep that for quiet. But, I guess that's a reward is a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So what are the Pens going to need to do to win that sixth cup? They're going to need to put some things together. Who's going to be most integral in this? And I know we always say Sid and Gino, getting Gensel back. I get all that, but who else is going to be really important for this team to win this next cup? And what do they got to avoid besides having Jack Johnson play on the top pairing?
They need the third line, and they need secondary guys to step up. I think that bottom six is going to be really, really, really critical. And it's going to be as critical as it was in 2015 and 2016. The HBK line was a thing for a reason. It became a big phenomenon for a reason. And I think the fact that you have all these guys back healthy, the fact that Jake Gensel's back healthy, that top line looks like the top line again. Jason Zucker drops down to Genny Malkin's wing. That second line looks like a second line again. Now you got guys like Patrick Hornquist and Patrick Marleau on the third line. And then the fourth line looks like a really good fourth line with guys like Zach Aston Reese that can really be like stout defensive guys. So now you have that forward group that's stocked. I think another thing that's huge, you talk about Jack Johnson not being on the top pairing, getting Brian Dumoulin back was absolutely monumental because now it changes up that defensive depth. Your top pairing has your best two guys now because you need your best two guys on your top pairing. and now everything else filters down from there. So the fact that this team is healthy, first of all, is an important thing. The fact they have depth now is an important thing. So the one thing they need to do is do what they've always done. Do what they've done before under Mike Sullivan. Roll 4 lines, have those 4 lines be very, very tenacious, and Mike Sullivan likes to say, tough to play against. But the thing that sticks out to me, and it stuck out to me since the day Mike Sullivan took the job, he stressed 3 things: possession, pursuit, and pace. And those 4 lines in that group of defensemen are going to be able to embody that to the T. And if they do what we know they're capable of doing, there's no reason why they can't be in it at the end.
When Brandon Tanev, who's like my favorite Penguin right now, when he's skating on your 4th line and creating havoc like he does, I mean, just stay healthy. Just stay healthy.
It's stay healthy, show up, and do what you do. It sounds simple, but a lot of things have to fall into place. And that's one thing that we kind of lose sight of. To win a championship, some things have to break your way. Some things have to break your way with injuries. Some things have to break your way with maybe when guys get hurt. If they get hurt earlier in the season, they're around later, so that helps you. Sometimes you get breaks with who you have to face. Some things have to work in your favor. So there are a few things that maybe they can't control that can work out for them. But as far as the things they can control, they're in as good as a position as anybody.
I like when I read people's comments about being so uptight about playing Montreal. I don't know. It's a different season. You know what I mean? Like they haven't met up since March with any other NHL team. It's a different time. A lot of things change in that course of time, and your approach, and you go back and you look at how you attack things then, and the players you have on the ice, like you said. So it's going to be interesting to see. What do they need to avoid, though? What are they going to need to avoid?
I think the thing they need to avoid is just assuming that the other team is going to roll over and play dead. Because when we've seen this team have its worst situations, when they've had their worst, results, when they've had their earliest demises, I think that's part of it. I think a couple situations, like when they played Boston in the conference finals, they just got outplayed. But I think sometimes when they look past people, or they just expect them to roll over because they're wearing black and gold with the Penguin on their sweater, and that's when they run into the biggest problem. So they can't look past anybody, because remember, everybody's in the same position they are.
Yeah.
Everybody had to lay off. Everybody had to come back and try all over again. Everybody's got to go to that bubble. So everybody's starting from ground zero. So you cannot assume that the other team is going to have more of an advantage or disadvantage just by being there, because everybody's starting in the same boat.
I hope whatever they were doing in November and December and even early January with that team playing that full ice game, back checking, getting the puck out of their zone, helping out in front of the goal, I hope that comes back around for them. I know they kind of lost sight of that for a while in February. It seemed to get a little bit of it back before this all got shut down. So my hope is that they refine that and continue to stress that. To me, the key contributor is going to be Malkin. It's not Sid, it's not Gensel. It's Malkin. It really is.
To your point, playing a 200-foot game it's paramount this time of year. When you get into the playoffs, you better play a 200-foot game, or you're not going to be playing a lot of games. It just becomes more important. It just becomes different. The way you chip the pucks into the zone becomes different. The way you dump and chase is different. The way guys are blocking shots, out near the point is different. The way guys chip the puck out from the net is different. There's more of an urgency there. So, you're going to have to do all those small things right. And I think the one thing that works in this organization's favor, they have a coach that already emphasizes those small things. He wants them to do those small things. And he wants them to treat every game as though it is April, May, or June. So that is one thing as far as from maybe a tactics standpoint, that they do have, the right mindset. But you're right. They have to come in, ready to go. They're going to have to hit the ground running, not totally displace the analogy, but they have to be ready to come in and play that game, because they have to expect the other teams to be ready to do the same thing. Because when a Stanley Cup is on the line, these guys will do anything. They will totally sell out. I made the joke, I want to say it was after they won in 2009, winning the Stanley Cup's like eating Chinese food. You have a taste of it, an hour later you want to do it again.
Yeah. So
if you've already done it, like Sid and Gino have done it 3 times and Letang's done it 3 times, that fourth, that's the fortune cookie, if you will. But if you're a guy like Patrick Marleau, you're still waiting in line to get your plate. So these are guys that really want to do this thing. And this is from the guys still trying to do it from the first time to the guys who have already done it before.
And at 40 years old, I don't know if Marlowe will get another chance.
You know what? He probably won't, and I think he knows it. I think I shouldn't assume that he won't, but I think he knows that the urgency is there. I think the guys around him know that the urgency is there, and it creates one of those stories. You're like, man, it would be really, really cool if this team lifts the cup for the fourth time in the Crosby-Malkin era, that Crosby turns and doesn't give it to Gino, he doesn't give it to Malkin, he doesn't give it to Letang, he gives it to Patrick Marleau.
Yeah.
That would be a really, really cool moment. It would be a cool moment for Marleau. It would be a cool moment for Sid. It would be a cool moment for the fans. You know, I know Gino wears an A on his sweater, but if for this one time, a la Trevor Daley, if you could bypass Malkin for a second and give it to Patrick Marleau, I think that's a moment that hockey fans everywhere would say, man, this is really, really awesome. It would just be the perfect ending to that story.
Gino seems to be the kind of humble guy, too, at least from my perspective, that would be like, yep, I understand why you just did that, and that's perfectly fine. I would do the same thing. So it's August 1st. You're Mike Sullivan. You're scratching out your lineup, and you get them all set. You got your pairings, you got your lines, all four. Everybody's healthy, and you get to the goalie. Do I go with Matt Murray? Because I absolutely love Matt Murray. If I'm Mike Sullivan, he's my boy. Or do I go with Tristan Jarry, who has played all-star level hockey when he's played this year? Who do you go with?
Well, I wrestle with this question because Mike Sullivan tends to do certain things. He'll ride the hot guy, but the thing is we don't know who the hot guy is right now. So it kind of throws that discussion out of the window because you're starting from scratch. So you can't ride the hot guy right now. And if you're going with the guy who was hot before everything busted up, then there's too much of a displacement between there. So riding the hot guy kind of goes out of the window as far as Mike Sullivan really following his tendencies, which makes me default to he's going to go with the guy that's done it before. Because Matt Murray's been in this position before a couple of different times. He did it as, you know, when you get that first experience, that first opportunity in the playoffs, and you go and become that guy, and you win the Stanley Cup being that guy, that's going to create a lot of trust. So I would not be shocked if Matt Murray was the guy.
You want a short leash, though? He comes out.
Absolutely.
First
Absolutely.
Game, up 3 goals right away. First period and a half. Is he on a short leash?
You're going to have to be cautious with how everything goes down. And this is one of those things where when you're talking about performance of goaltenders, you got to talk about the other 5 guys on the ice too. It's a chicken and egg situation because not every goal may be his fault. But if they give up 3 early and more than one of them is his fault, if you're Mike Sullivan, you're probably on the edge of your seat here. You're probably on your toes ready to pull them out. And I hope they don't get to that situation. But, yeah, I think that's something that sticks in the back of your mind.
So who's your Eastern Conference Finals?
Oh, God, don't make me do that now. Can we get past the first round before I can tell you that?
Let's tell me, besides Pittsburgh, 2 teams to watch in the Eastern Conference.
2 teams to watch in the Eastern Conference besides Pittsburgh. You're going to make me look at my notes now, and that's just not fair.
You like Tampa.
You never want to look past Tampa. That's the first name that's on my tongue here. And you never want to look past a team like Tampa just because the talent is so loaded. They're always so stacked from top to bottom. So it's so easy to go with Tampa. But I'm a guy that says, you know, don't look past – I'd say don't look past Toronto. I'd say don't look past a team like the Maple Leafs because they're a team that's young. They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of speed. And in a situation like this, they can get hot. And, you know, Toronto has that kind of speed that the game is shifted toward now.
Yeah.
So you look at Toronto and say, hey, maybe the Leafs. But this is one of those times where, you know, people are going to look at history and be like, Toronto, really? But once again, kind of similar to the 60-game season in baseball. This is an entirely different dynamic. You're starting all new here. It's like the reset button's been hit on everything. So this is not a normal situation. So you can't just expect everything to be ceteris paribus. But I'm saying Tampa as far as a team that you know is going to be a problem, and Toronto as a team you don't look past.
Out west, who do you like? You like Vegas? You like Colorado? I personally like Colorado coming out of the West. That's just me, though.
I think you picked my 2, honestly. Vegas is a team I'm never going to look past just because they're another team that has a lot of veteran talent. They've got guys that have done this before, including the guy in net because we know who he is.
Yeah.
If you can find the team that gets hot in net, and that's one of those things, and we talk about Matt Murray, Tristan Jarry, if you're a team that can get hot in net, we saw St. Louis do it. We saw St. Louis just ride a hot goaltender and take that plunge. So, yeah, I think you picked the two that I would probably look at first.
Yeah, they're what's his name from St. Louis? He was amazing last year. He was so fun to watch. He was just it was like the puck was coming in like a beach ball. Every shot. I enjoyed watching him.
Yeah, and all it takes is one team to have one goaltender be in that mode for 6 weeks. That's all it takes. And if that guy gets hot at that time, if he's in that mode, then look out.
I'm not going to ask you who's going to win it, but I'm going to ask you, is it going to be from the East or the West?
I will say Eastern Conference just because I think it's a little bit more top-heavy over there. It's just because we're talking about Pittsburgh and Tampa, and those are the two teams that are going to stick out immediately. I'll say the Eastern Conference is a little bit more top-heavy, so I'll say East.
A fun matchup, Pittsburgh aside, I don't want to be a homer. A fun matchup would be Toronto and Colorado.
Yes, that would be really, really fun because you're talking, Austin Matthews, Nathan McKinnon. Yep. You might have stumbled onto something fun. That's intriguing. That's a really intriguing matchup.
I would really enjoy that. That's me though. I just love hockey. I'll watch it anytime, any place. I watch the little guys play. I watch the big guys play. It doesn't matter. I watch the old fat ball guys team play out of our ring. It doesn't matter. I just love hockey.
I'll tell you, I had the experience of walking into the Igloo as a 9-year-old at a Penguins and Flames game, and I saw Zarli Zalapsky score the game winner in the first game I went to, and I was a fan ever since then. So you're talking, nearly, more than 30 years of me being a big fan of this sport, and I've been blessed to cover the pro game. I've been blessed to cover the college game. I've been blessed to cover the high school game. And no matter where you're watching it, no matter what level it's on, there's an excitement there that you can't find in many other places.
Did we miss the Frozen Four in Pittsburgh this year, or is that next year? They've got something.
Good question.
Yeah, they've got something coming up. It's coming up.
I want to say it was 2021.
Okay.
My brain is still in COVID mode, so I'm not like firing on all cylinders. I want to say we're a year off from that. If someone knows, shoot me a text and let me know.
Okay.
But yeah, I want to say we're still a ways away from that. At least I hope so for PPG's sake and college hockey fans, because college hockey is one of those things that's really starting to grow. It's starting to expand, and I think more people are getting on board. And the fact that it's getting a little bit more of a media presence, I think is awesome.
Have you been up to Penn State to see them play?
I haven't, and I want to see that arena because I hear it's fantastic. I'd love to. I've been on the campus, but I haven't been up to see a game yet. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to get up there and do it because, man, it would – being on the campus in itself is cool because there's just kind of an aura to it, especially when you go past Beaver Stadium. But to be able to step into that arena and see what that kind of money's been able to put together for a college hockey team that pretty much built itself up. I won't say out of nowhere, but – it's pretty close. So I'd love to see how that works.
We went up there a couple Januaries ago. The wife and I took our son up, and I was just enamored with the Pergola Center. It was just a beautiful facility and first-class accommodations. It was just – I just thought it was spectacular what they had there. So I highly recommend it the first chance you get. You go check that out. Maybe even take the missus out.
Knowing her, she'd be all for it. I've actually converted her to a hockey fan. She's from New York originally. She's a half Puerto Rican, half Dominican from New York. So basically her sports, expansion was pretty much her exposure was pretty much baseball and boxing and a little bit of basketball.
Okay.
And I found a way to convert her into a football and hockey fan. So I'm sure if I said, hey, let's go to Penn State, watch a hockey game, she'd jump in the car.
That's good stuff. All right. Last team I want to talk about is our Pittsburgh Steelers. Camp is getting ready to open. Your expectations for 2020 before I get a little bit more in depth. Your expectations.
There's what I expect and there's what I hope for. I expect this team to look the same way it did on defense as it did last year, with a couple other things in mind. You got a healthy Stephon Tuitt, which is going to look a lot better. Still question marks of what they're going to do as far as defensive line. Can Daniel McCullers be that guy in the middle? He's been here a while. You wonder if this is really the last ride for him as far as him being an impact guy on this defense. But you get T.J. Watt back, you get Bud Dupree back, you get Cam Hayward healthy and continuing to be the leader that he is, and finally playing at the level that we hoped he could become, because injuries kind of got in the way the first couple times. Yeah. He started to make that turn, but now he's playing on that level. He is the consummate leader of this football team right now. I think he's one of those guys that the organization is fortunate to have, because he represents, we're talking about a different era now. This isn't the early 2000s with the Dick LeBeau defense and the close-knit nature of that group, and the Joey Porters and the Ike Taylors and the James Harrisons. That era's come and gone. But Cam Hayward still embodies a lot of that ethos from that time. And he's one of those guys that – I call Cam Hayward an old-school Steeler, because he's one of those guys that when he walks in the room, from the moment he walks in, even before he suits up and after he takes his uniform off, he gets it the entire time. He gets it by how he behaves on the field. He gets it by how he behaves off the field. He gets it by how he behaves out in the community. Cam Hayward is just that guy that represents the organization the way they want every guy to do it. So from that perspective, I think they walk into a great opportunity, having that defense coming back intact, being that good, having those corners back, having Steven Nelson, having Joe Hayden, having Minka Fitzpatrick with, if people were telling you that Minka Fitzpatrick's not an impact guy, I got to ask him what games we're watching, because he came to this defense and he became the missing link. He was the one piece they did not have and completed the whole picture. So I expect that defense to be just as good, if not better. And if it's better, my God, watch out AFC.
Terrell Edmonds has got to step his game up, though, and that's secondary to help them.
He's the other question mark, I would think. Besides the defensive line in the middle with Dan McCullers, obviously the inside linebacker position is a question mark. But Terrell Edmonds has got to be ready to step up and fill that role, because as much as Minka Fitzpatrick does, as much ground as he covers, as great of an instinctual player as he is, if the guy with him doesn't match it, it's not going to be as productive. Because you think about the guys that Troy Polamalu played with over the years. Who was the one guy that he really, really meshed with? It was Ryan Clark. When he was Ryan Clark, you paired those guys together, and it's just like one guy knew what to do, and the other guy just did his thing. So if Terrell Edmonds can become that guy that just be here when Minka's over here doing this. Just be here and make sure that, just make sure the dam is plugged. If he can do that, then you have a lot of a better feeling. I don't need Terrell Edmonds to be an all-pro ball hawk guy. You got an all-pro ball hawk guy. Just be the guy that compliments him and be the safety valve if he needs some help.
I kind of chuckled. Actually, I didn't chuckle. I got a good laugh out of it when people were like, oh, the Steelers should make a run at Jamal Adams. And I said, why? You already have a safety who's integral back there. You don't need two guys that need all that fanfare. You need –
Better yet, how?
Well,
how do you enforce on those guys in time? Because
to take a huge pay cut?
It's not like you can take out a home equity loan to pay a second safety. It's not the same kind of game. But, it's one of those things that you dream on. It's back when we used to talk about, who's the better safety? Was it Ed Polamalu? Was it Ed Reed or Troy Polamalu? If you asked Troy, he'd say Ed. If you asked Ed, he'd say Troy. And they'd say, man, it'd be fun to play together. Granted, you'd never get that opportunity. You'd never see that happen. But, as fun as it would be to have that guy in his defense, because it seems like, it's almost like you're upgrading. It's like almost like you're going from a Rolls Royce to a Bentley. You really can't lose either way. But, it'd be fun to dream on.
I'm sure you saw this. I forget who it was. They were putting out the rankings of the top 10 players at each position, and Minka wasn't even mentioned as one of the top 10 safeties. And I just – it's like when the guys get their feathers all up in a bunch, so to speak, about their ranking on Madden. I'm like, you know what? Your actions speak louder than any of that. And the bottom line is the cash. So if you're playing your position well, you're going to get paid. Who cares where you're ranked?
Madden ratings last forever, Mark. Those paychecks come and go. Those Madden ratings, they stay on wax. They last forever. So I can't say I blame them to a degree, but yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, when you're playing for the paycheck is the bigger deal. But hey, some people may only remember you by your Madden rating. It's kind of important.
Those dudes get so fired up about that, and I'm like, man, I wish that would make me angry if somebody rated more than what So Ben's coming back, and I'm pretty excited about this, but I know Ben's 38 years old. I was listening to one guy. I think it was a national guy. I can't remember exactly who it was, but he was talking about how the Steelers are going to take a giant step even further back, which I don't know how that could be offensively, with Ben coming back, that he had a bad season last year when he played, and he had a bad season the year before. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, didn't he throw for 5,000 yards the last full season he played? Like, how can you actually make that determination?
He did, but there's the converse. He also led the league in picks. And I did this research. I want to say in the last 15 seasons, the guy that led the league in picks made the playoffs maybe 2 or 3 times and won the Super Bowl once, and that guy was Eli Manning. But here's something to look at. When you look at quarterbacks that have led the league in picks in the last 15 years, Ben's done it twice. So that sticks out. In both times he led the league in picks, they didn't make the playoffs. So some things do pretty much dictate themselves from that regard. So you can't just ignore that part. Here's the thing. I don't need Ben to be a guy that throws for 5,000 yards. I don't need him to try for that, because I think if he tries to match that, he's going to look like that guy that led the league in picks again. We're talking about a guy who's, 37 years old?
Yeah.
He's at the twilight of his career. And I brought this up a few different times, and I think Adam Crowley from ESPN 970 has echoed my same sentiment. Ben grew up idolizing John Elway. Remember John Elway's final 2 seasons?
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to do it by himself. He did not have to be like the prime number 1 guy doing everything. He had a Hall of Fame tight end. He had a Hall of Fame running back. He had 2 really good – they weren't all pros or Hall of Famers in Rod Smith and Ed McCaffrey, but they were really productive guys. He had some really good linemen in front of him, Tom Nalen, and also Mark Schlereth. He had a really good defense on the other side of the ball. He didn't have to do it all by himself, and he didn't have to be the focal point. He's got a lot of guys around him that can do the job. Ben's in that same position. If he just has the guys around him, put them in the position to where all he has to do, okay, get the ball to the right guy and get out of the way. Or hand the ball off to the right guy, get out of the way. He's got an offensive line that's been somewhat rebuilt. I think that gives him a little bit of depth that protects in front of him. He may not have the big names he had in the past few years as far as skill position guys go, but if each of those guys can come in and pitch in and do their jobs individually and just do what they need to do, then maybe Ben doesn't have to be that guy that's the focal point of the offense. And that's honestly what I prefer. I would love to see his last couple years in this league be the same as the guy he grew up idolizing, because if he does, that means he's done his job well and he had help around him.
I am looking forward to reading Antonio Brown's memoirs at some point in life. And part of and I say that because that 5,000-yard season that Ben had 2 years ago, that he threw all those picks, I want to say that had something to do with the fact that Antonio Brown was on his back about getting the ball in his hands.
But he also got 5,000 yards because one of the guys he was throwing to was Antonio Brown.
True.
You got to take the bitter with the sweet. We keep trying to make it, it's the quarterback, it's the receiver. They work in tandem. As many times as Ben might have forced some throws into AB, there were some times when the only guy Ben could get the ball to was AB. And he was covered, but yet he somehow caught the ball. There were some times that Ben made some throws that other receivers would not catch, but AB caught them. Yeah. We're talking about throws against the sideline that a lot of receivers could not catch. Remember, this guy closed out and helped this team win games with some catches that were absolutely unbelievable. My mind goes straight back to that Green Bay game that was on national television. Ben throws it up against the sideline. A lot of receivers don't make that catch, and AB finds a way to catch that ball and get his feet down. And that led to a win. So we talk about, what one guy did the other one didn't do. I look at it as the reason why things work so well is because they worked well as a tandem. We could talk about Ben forcing a lot of balls to AB that ended up being picks, but he also made a lot of passes that he probably shouldn't have thrown to AB that ended up being huge plays because that's the one guy he could rely on most consistent.
Sure. They had that chemistry. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. And there's a reason why AB had the kind of 6-year run that no other receiver in the history of the game has ever had, because AB was that good and because Ben was that good.
Josh, is he a Hall of Famer?
AB, yes.
Yeah. He's a Hall of Famer?
Absolutely. You don't have the kind of run that he's had, like I just mentioned, where you did stuff in 6 years that Jerry Rice and T.O. and the I'm trying to think some of the names here, the Andre Risons and some of those guys, just the guys that are in that logjam of wide receivers, even the ones that haven't gotten in yet. Michael Irvin hasn't done that. Chris Carter hasn't done it. He did things in 5 or 6 years that those guys did not do, and you can't ignore that.
I read today where he would need to average 9.3 yards per game for the next, say, 5 or 6 years in order to catch in order to catch Hines Ward in yardage accumulated as a Steeler receiver. And I just kind of got a chuckle out of that, like you just did. 9.3 yards a game. That's like a screen pass to Antonio Brown once a game.
Or it's like the way they fed the ball to Hines Ward at the end of his career. If you want to look at it that way, because we can talk about what Hines did and what AB did all we want, but that last couple of years, they were forcing the issue of getting the ball to Hines because everybody knew, hey, this ain't gonna be happening much more often after this. So we got to get this in while we can. Everybody knew what time it was.
Do you think Hines will ever get in? Do you think he had a Hall of Fame career?
I think he had a Hall of Fame career in the respect that he had most of the benchmarks that receivers have that get in the Hall. He had most of them. The one that didn't really stick out was the touchdown catches. He didn't have enough touchdown catches to do it. I thought he had the receptions to do it. I thought he had the yards to do it. He's also won 2 Super Bowls and been a Super Bowl MVP. So a lot of those major benchmarks that Hall of Fame receivers get to get in, he's hit most of them. But he didn't hit all of them. And maybe he didn't exceed them the way that some of the other ones did. And that's probably why, the first 3 or 4 go-rounds probably you won't hear his name. But I think eventually he will get in just because of those benchmarks that he hit, because of the teams that he played on, and ultimately because of the success that – and sometimes this is fair or unfair. But the success of the team sometimes does impact the guy's resume. I don't always think that's the most – insightful thing in the world. I don't think it's the most honest thing in the world. I don't think it's the most indicative thing in the world, but they take that into consideration.
Too bad they can't take into consideration your blocking because, man, could that man block?
Well, there's another part of it because you talk about guys that change the way the game is played. Hines fits in that category. Now, is blocking one of the key things for a wide receiver? It's probably 5th or 6th on the list, if we want to be honest.
Yeah.
But he has changed the way to a degree the way that position is played. Now, I think he's one of the guys that if you're looking at something that sets him apart, that's maybe something that should be a garnish on the meal as opposed to being the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, I get it. I totally understand that. Let's jump back to the defense for just a second. Who is going to need to take that next step forward? And I know we talked about Terrell Edmonds, but out of that young core of guys that they have there essentially with Devin Bush, and who's going to need to take that next step forward to take this defense to being a pretty good defense? They were a pretty good defense to being a championship caliber defense.
It's got to be Devin Bush. It's got to be Devin Bush because there's the depth in the middle of the field at the inside linebacker position isn't as deep as it is at corner. It's not as deep as it is at defensive line. It's not as deep as it is, at safety. So the inside linebacker position, there's going to have to be a need for production. So Devin Bush is going to have to be the guy to assume that mantle. It's really, really important that he is. And I'm excited about Devin Bush. You see some of the plays that he's made already in just a short time in his career. And you're like, man, if he can get to that point where – because you have young players that have that talent, but they maybe haven't learned how to prepare for everything yet. Maybe they haven't learned – how to pick up all those small things on film. Maybe they haven't learned what to expect in certain situations and they haven't had that game experience. But there will come a time, as good as Devin Bush is now, as talented as he is now, there will come a time when that switch will turn on. And when that switch turns on, I hope I'm in the room. I hope I'm in the building. I hope I'm in the area. Because when that switch turns on for Devin Bush, it will be really, really fun to watch.
I love his character too.
He's a really good kid. And he's a kid who's had a dad that's in the league. He gets it walking in the door, and you need that. If you want a guy to be a leader on your team, he's got to be the guy that gets it when he walks in the door. And I think Devin Bush does.
Did you see they inked Chase Claypool today?
I didn't. I haven't been able to look around a lot. I've been kind of running around all day.
Yeah, they inked Chase Claypool today, and I like that kid. I'm curious to see how they use that boy because he's got a tight end body.
Yeah.
He's got a Hines Ward mentality when it comes to blocking, but he can stretch it down the middle and outrun anybody. So, it's going to be interesting to see how he's used.
He's the perfect complement. They needed a guy like that because you can't have Juju trying to do everything. And you can't have Juju being the focal point of the defense because, Juju's not an AB. AB can be double and triple teamed and produced. Juju's not that guy. There's only one AB. There's a reason why AB is the only one who's done what he's done. No one else is built to do that. And Juju's he's not expected to be that guy. But now Chase Claypool, makes Juju's job a lot easier. Having a tight end like Eric Ebron makes Juju's job a little bit easier. So now you got Claypool stretching things deep. You got Ebron that hopefully can make plays in the middle of the field. And now you have an element to where you're back to where, okay, who's getting your attention and who are you going to leave open to kill you? Because the guy you leave open to kill you, that's a decision you can't make wrong.
So you talk about Juju. Let me give you a list of guys that are coming up as free agents, and let me put you in a different GM's seat. So you've got Cam Hayward, Joe Hayden, James Conner, Juju, El Villanueva. I mean, you've got all those guys and a few others you could sprinkle in there too. Who's going to be most important out of all those guys to keep around going forward?
Let me see if I can remember the list in my head. I'll check them off in terms of the guys that stay.
Hayward.
Cam Hayward stays. Who else did you name?
Joe Hayden.
Hayden stays. I think those are two prime guys, and they need both of them on the defense.
James Conner.
To be determined. This season probably dictates that.
If Benny Snell takes some of his carries, it could change the whole dynamic of his future.
And they just drafted a running back, and we've learned over the past couple of years, the teams that have the most success in the playoffs, the teams that are going the furthest, they're doing it with running back by committee. Right. So I say James Conner to be determined. Juju, I think, stays. I think people that are expecting big things of Juju, and honestly, to expect big things of Juju it's not unrealistic. But at the same time, can you afford to lose another receiver to try to remake things over again? And this is fully understanding that the track record this team has of drafting wide receivers. But I like to think with the kind of character Juju has and the way Juju has played, at least when things are going right. And now that we just talked about the compliments that make his job easier, I think Juju stays. I think the guys that I am looking at with a jaundiced eye, James Conner, I say to be determined, and I wonder if Al Villanueva is still here. I think out of those five, he might be the most expendable.
You can almost, depending on who wins that right tackle spot, because obviously they're going to move Fowler to that left guard, or that's the plan. Maybe Zach Banner wins one of those tackle spots.
If he's not tackle eligible, fans will be disappointed.
That guy, he's quite the character. I keep hitting him up to come on the podcast. He will not respond. He's really tied up in doing some great things right now. I love what he's doing. He seems like such a good young man.
I think he has a great message too. I think his message is not necessarily of just emphasizing one thing or another. It's, look, you have to come to an understanding here. I don't know any great collective feat that hasn't been achieved, but without compromise.
Yeah.
And I think he understands that from that standpoint. And this is both societal and the business standpoint or in a team standpoint. I think Zach Banner gets that. But I think he's found a way to latch himself onto this fan base in a few different ways. And the fact that he's becoming more of a stand-up guy in the community is just another thing that really has endeared him to this fan base.
It was funny. He tweeted something the other night. He talked about when he played in Cleveland, how they went, 1-15 or 0-16.
Yes, I saw that tweet.
I
thought it was great.
Him about, I don't know why you care you didn't get on the field. And he said, you know what? I'd look really good in that picture beside your girlfriend instead of you, or something really funny.
I was a bigger fan of how it started because they're like, oh, how do you feel about going against 0-2 against the Browns this year? He's like, well, I played against them, and we went 0-16 or 1-15, so what do I care? I'm like, dude, that when it comes to cell phones, does anybody do cell phones better than Browns fans? I submit they do not.
No, not at all. Well, my final question for you is this. So you've been all in on sports journalism and TV and radio. If you didn't do that, what would you do? Where would you have gone in life if you wouldn't have gone down this road?
Probably what I'm doing now. I've taken the opportunity, and this is something I haven't talked about a lot. I have taken the opportunity recently with COVID impacting everything. And, of course, if you haven't seen me on TV or heard me on the radio, you're not crazy because I haven't done a lot. Just kind of started to come back around once the Pirates started up again and the Penguins started up again. And I'll be back on again this Saturday. So this weekend I'll be doing TV again and a few Saturdays to come. So it'll be good getting back into that old routine. But, I took the opportunity in the midst of all of this to kind of, I don't want to say reinvent myself, but I had to kind of look at things with a different mindset where, you're not going to get the opportunity to do everything you want to do. So you have to be able to do, other things. You have to be able to adjust. And I was able to do that. I went out and got my life insurance license and, started to kind of develop a business mindset of my own. So if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be out here trying to put a couple different businesses together and get my name out here a different way. That's kind of what I'm doing now. It's kind of a joint venture with media and being an entrepreneur, but it's kind of a fun new chapter for me as I, leave my 30s and enter my 40s, which is, just a year away. Kind of hard to
you know what? 40s are the new 30s. That's all.
Yeah.
Don't sweat it. Talk to me,
it's
be my age.
All right, fair enough. But it's something that I've kind of adopted. Like, you're getting to that point where you're getting to your 40s and, life starts to take a different, it starts to take a different tone.
Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge the fact, and this is something I knew going in. When I went back to school in 2007, I knew I went in, and the moment I walked into the business, the clock started ticking. There will come a time when you're done. You're not going to do this forever. There's probably a little bit of gray you can see in the beard right now and in the temples too. There's going to come a time when I'm going to age out of this business, or, I'm not going to be the guy that I once was, or I might not even have the same desire that I once was. Maybe I don't have the same fire. And I made myself a promise a long time ago, because this was chasing a dream for me to do this. So there's a lot of different things I can do. I did this because it was something I always dreamed of doing. And once I found out it was possible, I thought I owed it to myself to try it. But I made myself a promise a long time ago that if it got to the point where I could not bring the same energy, where I couldn't bring the same passion, and couldn't get the same things out of it that I did when I started, that I would walk away.
Yeah.
I think about Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you ever saw the episode of Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton. Dave Chappelle said when he first decided that he was going to get into comedy, his dad told him, name your price. Know what your price is. And if it ever gets above that price, then it's time to walk away. That's kind of how I look at it. So I know that eventually there's going to have to be a post-media life for me.
Right.
And why not plan for it now, especially when you got this small 3-4 month snapshot of what it might be like with no sports during this whole pandemic. So it was kind of that wake up call for me. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing how, the outside of media life goes for me. It'll be exciting. It'll be fun.
Life's new challenge. I get it.
Absolutely. It's that. And we're living in a world right now where, not to get too off topic, but you have to find new ways to just do things for yourself. There are a lot of people out there with side hustles and doing different gigs. I got 5 different jobs in media.
Right. Just
in media alone. And I've got 2 or 3 other ventures outside of it that I'm trying to do. So, the key to being, in the part of your life or in the season of your life that you want to be in is you're going to have to be multi-layered. You're going to have to be multifaceted. You might have to do more than one thing. It's a different kind of world now. And the people that can, hustle more than one way are the ones that are going to continue to get ahead.
Yeah, I hear you 100%. That's why I'm doing this. This is
absolutely
something that I've always wanted to do. I tried to get into the communications field when I was in college. It didn't work out. I ended up teaching the last 20 plus years. Everybody always told me, kind of like they told you, you know a lot about sports. You need to share that wealth. And that's 2 years ago, I started investigating this adventure. And that's what took me to where I'm at right now, sitting here having great conversation with you and producing a podcast. So I understand exactly where you're coming from.
And we're in a world now where you don't have to wait for someone else to tell you when you can do this. You don't have to wait to tell someone, okay, you can go in now and use this microphone. Now you can use your voice in this medium. You now have the power to do it yourself. So hats off to you for taking that initiative, because there's so many people who want to do things and there's so much that stands in the way. There's that fear. There's that, okay, what if I screw up? What if no one listens? What if this happens? What if that happens? You know how many blogs I've tried to start and failed?
Exactly.
I've tried blogs 2 or 3 different times. I tried one of my own. I tried a Pirates blog. And you know what? Actually, I tried 2 different Pirates blogs, and both of them went down in flames. If you are looking at the reason not to do something as what if you fail, then you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to succeed without asking yourself, what happens if this goes well? If I kept that mindset, then I don't go back to Duquesne for a year in 2007, and I'm not sitting here now with the kind of career I have. We have a world now technologically where people can do those things that they want to do. You can actually create videos on your own if you have a phone or a computer with a camera like mine is right now that I'm looking into. So you have that ability, you have that power to create now. It's an easier time than ever to be a content creator. But you have to have that desire. You have to have the willingness to go out and try some things, and some things won't work right away. You're going to have to, adjust with it. You got to adapt to survive. And if you have the heart to do it, if you have the determination and the drive to do it, God bless, because it's a great time to do that, because there's so much you can get out into the world now, because the world's such a small place.
Yeah.
You can get content here on the other side of the planet.
Yeah. You
weren't able to do that 30 years ago. You can do that now. Yeah. I thought one of the strangest things that I've heard in recent years is that, if you have a smartphone, you have better access to information than the president of the United States did 25 to 30 years ago. This is an entirely different era that we're in. If anything, and I think Gary Vaynerchuk is one of the guys that said it, famous entrepreneur. He says, you're in one of the greatest times to live right now, because you can go out and have that opportunity and that platform and the materials to do whatever you want to do, create whatever you want to create. And this is the best time to do it right now.
I agree 100%. I love your outlook and your thoughts on that. That was perfect. Perfect. All right, my final segment with you, and I'm gonna get you by your way. I do this thing called Decade Definers, and I'm gonna kind of narrow it down just a little bit for you. I'm gonna ask you to share with me the 3 most interesting games you've covered in your career, and it can be anything from high school to college to a pro game. Instead of 5, we'll go down to 3.
This is good. I will go game 1 of the 2016 Stanley Cup playoffs, or Stanley Cup finals with I want to say it was game 1 that was here against Nashville. I was there for that. I really want to say it was game 1, but I got to double check that. I will go. There's a couple good Steeler games I was present for. And honestly, this one, I wasn't a member of the media. I was there as a fan, but I was there for that Steeler win against Chicago when Jerome Bettis ran over Brian Urlacher in the end zone. That started that winning streak where they snatched the 6th seed and they go on and win the Super Bowl. I was there for that game. So I'll say that's one of the games that kind of molded everything for me too. And I'll say the 2013 wildcard game. I'll go with those 3 just because, to say you were there and witness the atmosphere. I don't think we'll ever see anything like the 2013 wildcard game ever again. It was just an amazing situation to be in. And I was lucky to be around, as a member of the media for the 14 and 15 seasons, because 13 I was still working in Arkansas. But, to be able to witness just that opportunity to see this team in the wild card game 3 times. And granted, they lost 2 of them, but, that's an experience that if you're a fan in this era, that's something that you hold close to your heart.
Yeah. Yep. You gotta respect what happens there too. It just, there's no doubt about it. I want to thank you. It's been fun. I think we've covered a whole lot of material. Love your thoughts on it. I can't wait to see how all 3 of these seasons play out and look back on your thoughts on them and see if the Pens can actually put another one up on the trophy case. The Pirates can actually get to the dance, and if Ben really makes a difference and that defense becomes as dynamic as possible. So thanks again for all your thoughts. Take care, and best of luck going forward in all your adventures.
I appreciate the time, man. It's good to get into, solid sports discussion again. There's only so many Jordan LeBron debates you can get into before your brain explodes. So it's good to talk about something else that's concrete, because we're talking about things getting started again. We're talking about sports being back, and that shows that hopefully we're making some progress, and hopefully we continue to make progress, because this isn't just about sports for sports fans being, rewarded. This is about, the world getting back to what it always has been. And I'd like to think that there are lessons that we have learned or should have learned during this, this early part of the year. So hopefully we've learned from those things. Hopefully we take those lessons and move those forward. And like you said, we get back into sports being a thing again, to kind of steal my own tagline. No, sports is no longer is this a thing. Sports is becoming a thing again. And it's good to get back into that swing of things.
Thanks again. You take care, Josh.
Appreciate the time, Mark. Thanks, brother.